doing today? Today we're going to do another unorthodox review because I'm sick of all this political correctness crap. So let's review an Omega and let's compare it to a Seiko. How's that sound, guys? Sound cool? Customary wristwatch check. Seiko Monster, Rolex GMT Master 2, because I can. Let's get this thing started. Alright guys, let's go ahead and get started. Here we have another review, which I have no doubt I will continue to offend people in the watch industry, and this is one of those things that I'm going to polarize people and people are going to get upset with me. And you know what? Oh well. So how dare I compare a Seiko to an Omega? Well, I own both of these watches, I paid for both of these watches, and I like them equally. And I suspect if you like one or the other, you may as well. So I want to address this. I seem to have locked myself in a corner with my YouTube channel of always trying to show people to look closer and expand their horizons and investigate other brands and not get locked into brand biases and just assume that something is expensive, therefore it must be great. And or just because something is expensive and great that you can't get something better or equal to it for less money. And so this is another one of those videos where I challenge you guys to check your norms and tell me what you guys think. So here we have two watches that I think I'm pretty sure I'm the only person that's ever compared these two. And if anybody does it after me, I think they're copying my style because I don't know of anybody outside of myself that would ever think about an Omega Seamaster and a Seiko Monster in the same light, except for most of the people that watch my channel. I know a lot of you guys that watch me continuously are not brand biased or blindsided by price tags, and I know you guys are open to stuff like this as well. Because when you're passionate about watch collecting, you're passionate about watches, you don't necessarily have to buy the brand or buy the price tag. You buy what speaks to you, you buy what matters to you, and what resonates with you. And so here are two very dissimilar watches in price point with brand history and specifications, and yet they're very similar. And for me, they find equal wrist time and equal love on my behalf. I love these both dearly for very different reasons. And even though the Omega is typically a $2,000 plus proposition and the Seiko a $300 to $500 proposition, that doesn't mean that they don't deserve to be compared and they don't all have their own benefits and drawbacks. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get started. So here we have a 253180 in nerd speak. This is the Bond pre-ceramic Omega Seamaster. Back in the days when they had non-applied markers and they still had the wave pattern on the dial. This is my favorite generation of the Seamaster. Over here, we have the SRP 307J1. This is the 4R36 equipped Seiko Monster. The J1 is, of course, specifying that this is the Japanese-made spec. 4 reviews on both of these, or I go into 20 plus minutes of detail on both, so I'm gonna spare you all that stuff, but if either one of these watches really speaks to you after this video, go check out the full review if you haven't seen it, or I'll get into really nerdy details. But in short, here's what you really need to know. They're both roughly 41 millimeters. The Seiko wears a little bit closer to 42, the Omega closer to 41. They both are divers watches. They both come on bracelets equipped with divers extensions. They're both automatics, and they're both wonderful, wonderful icons of their brands. And let's go ahead and just start looking at the details. So we'll go ahead and get started with the Omega Seamaster. As you guys know, if you've seen my review or if you've spent too much time listening to my videos, this is a watch from my childhood. Again, I'm the kid of the era of the Bond movies where Pierce Brosnan was the heroine, and I will never forget the first time I saw Pierce Brosnan wearing this watch. And, you know, on the train where he pulls out and he's using a laser to get through the floor or activating the remote mines. Those are images that are forever stuck in my brain. And this watch has been a must-have for me for most of my life. And owning one now, I can say that it's lived up to my expectations. So what's this watch known for? Well, first things first, as a dive watch, it's 300 meter or 1,000 feet dive depth rating. This one is the professional chronometer, so this is actually the automatic movement. The movement in this watch is a Cal 1120. Cal 1120 is a highly modified ETA 2892. If you want to see this movement, I've actually featured the case back off of this watch showing you the movement on both my Instagram and on the review. The short end of it is, you know, I make fun of in a lot of my videos people repurposing ETA calibers, and in this case I give credit because they actually did a very nice job of differentiating the movement. They added some jewels, they added some beautiful finishing to it, they swapped the rotor out. They actually did some really nice work to the movement. They got it to chronometer specs, so it's keeping very accurate time within COSC specifications. And as you can see, just some basic specs about it. The movement as it is in this watch now is 23 joules. It is currently ticking at 28,800 beats per hour. It's the same you would see from most Breitlings and Rolexes, just for comparison's sake. This is back in the day, as I said, they used to have the non-applied indices and also that awesome wave dial. I love that dial. Now, a lot of people have asked me on my previous review of this watch and in general, why my minute hand at the top has like a whitish orange color to it. It was originally red. This piece is from about 1999 and the second hand's faded, so it's part of the patina of the watch. Over here, this does not do anything crazy like Bond would have you do it. This is just for the helium escape valve. This is one of those things that it's kind of cool. You either love it or you hate it. It's kind of like the Cyclops on a Rolex. It's one of those things that's very polarizing in the watch community. Basically, I know people will expect it to do something. It basically unscrews and screws, and it lets helium escape from the crystal. Now, on a watch like this, I think for a 1,000-foot dive watch and the way people use this, I don't think a helium escape valve is really something that is needed. Although you guys in the diving community, I know you guys follow me. Tell me whether or not you think that's really something you guys need on a watch with this depth rating and the way it's typically going to see use. The bezel itself, the color blue on it's faded a little bit, but the bezel's got this little bit of a coin edge to it. And one of my criticisms on the review and of the watch in general is it's a pain to turn. And I've explained in every video, and I'll just quickly touch on it again too, what do you use the bezel for in case you're not familiar. You line up this luminous dot with the minute hand. So in this case, we'll line it up over here. And as time ticks by, you can keep track of elapsed time. So you can keep track of your time on the bottom, how much oxygen you have left, or for people using desk diving features on this watch, as I use it as a corporate desk watch, you can just keep track of time between meetings or whatever else you guys feel like timing in your interesting lives. Wow, that said really condescending when I said that. I didn't mean that condescendingly. I take that statement back. I say that because my life is boring too. Crown is very interesting on this watch. This is one of the watches that I think of when I think of really crowded crown guards. The crown guards really hug the crown. A lot of watches, you don't see the crown so surrounded by the crown guards right here. And they come to a kind of a point too, which is, again, this is the only watch I really think of that has a crown guard set up like this. The crown is almost kind of hidden. You can see on this side it's fully exposed, but on the dial side, it almost kind of gets cocooned in the crown guards. So, screw down crown, first position, winding, second position, changes the date, quick set date, third position, hacking. So you can accurately set the watch to an atomic clock. You basically can freeze the second hand up at 12, and then you can perfectly set the time based on an atomic clock or any such device you decide to set it to. Again, screw down crown, it seats itself very nicely. I would be very comfortable with the water tightness on this watch. Comes on the Omega Professional bracelet. As I mentioned in the review of this watch, and for those of you familiar, my watch has been brushed. This was unfortunately the victim of a moron doing some brushing work. Typically you would have seen high polish on the outer ends of these middle links, but some moron jeweler took the watch at one point and just brushed off all the high polish. So if you like a stealthy look, this watch has a pure brush look, but that's not the way it would have looked from the factory. Push pin links, they're okay. Omega is now using scrut links, as I think every watch in this price point should, but this is back in the day when they didn't. So it does have a nice diver's extension. It sits in here in the case. You just apply some downward pressure and it comes out. And that is, of course, to make the thing fit over your wrist if you're wearing a wetsuit. As when you're wearing a wetsuit, your wrist gets thicker, and you need a little bit more of an extension to make the watch still fit on your wrist. One of the things I don't like about this watch, too, is this bit here is actually a little bit sharp. I don't know how they let it leave the factory like that. You could probably cut somebody with it, but nice little bonus weapon there on the watch. Omega Seamaster Professional, it says up here, dual deployant triggers, and it's got a nice machined clasp that locks in securely, and again, dual deployant to open it. And there's some Omega markings in there that I'll be lucky if I can get to show up on my camera. The triangle is the Omega symbol. In a triangle it says Omega and it mentions that it's stainless, and there's of course some markings on the bracelet itself, including the reference on the bracelet. My big pet peeve with this, by the way, there's no micro adjustment. So this is a watch, you size it a little bit loose because as temperature changes and seasons change, it's going to wear tighter or looser to your wrist. And I really, really, really wish Omega would have put micro adjustments on this bracelet. It's a big pet peeve of mine. One thing that I do love about this watch, and Omega tends to do this very well, is the case back. And there we have the lovely Seamaster Seahorse and the Omega logo below it. And you know, this watch is from, again, 1999. I think this series came out about 1994, and I still think this watch looks awesome. I don't think it's dated at all, but again, I'm biased and I loved Pierce Brosnan, and this watch is very dear to me. So there's the Omega. Let's take a look at the Seiko. So here we have my Seiko Monster. If you guys have been following me for a long time, you know this is the watch that kind of set me through an interesting period in my watch collecting history. Long story short is I was a massive Rolex collector, which of course you could see if you've seen some of my older videos on the channel, which I do not recommend because they're terrible quality. But back in the day, I was really big into Rolex. I was above wearing anything Seiko or anything Japanese. I was too good for it. And part of that was the Seikos they sell in the US are not as good, in my mind, as the ones they sell overseas. And the ones that I'd been experienced with in the US were all gold-plated and felt really cheap. This watch, however, is a very different animal. And going back about 5 or 6 years now, I can't remember, one day I was at work wearing my 16610 Rolex Submariner, a watch that is departed from my collection long ago. And a coworker of mine came up to show me their new Seiko Monster. They had bought an SRP, but they bought the orange dial and they bought the K version. So I've said this on many videos, and you guys that watched me were going to be sick of this story, but they brought their watch over to me and were going to show it to me. And again, I was expecting absolute junk and was going to say something nice about it and get them to go away. But I gave them my Rolex to try on, and they gave me the Seiko, and at that point, my jaw must have hit the floor because the Seiko blew my mind. The quality on this watch is incredible, and again, the first time I held it, I actually, at the time, and I've said this in many videos, I thought this watch was better quality than my Rolex, which back in the 90s was not saying much because I had a 1997 U series, and the bracelets on those were junk in comparison to even the one on this Monster. But that's a whole other tangent. But long story short, first time I saw this watch, it was love at first sight, and this thing set me on my obsession with Seiko, and so this watch is a very special piece in my collection. So like the Omega, this is also a dive watch. This is only good to 200 meters, I say only. For desk diving duty, it's more than good enough. For you divers in the world, feel free to chime in and tell me if you think that extra 100 meters makes a difference. I'm not going to try to talk about something I don't understand. Diving is not a specialty of mine, so I'd love to hear a diver chime in about what they think about the different depth ratings. It also does not come with a helium escape valve, which again, in my mind, is something that's not needed, but again, divers out there, feel free to let me know what you guys think. This is the J version, so on the dial itself, we'll see if I can get it to focus. Down here, it says made in Japan. This is the J version. There's a K version that I believe is made like in Malaysia, if I remember. But anyway, awesome watch. It's got that nice brutalist aesthetic to it. I know that I am in a group of people that likes these, and this is a love it or hate it watch. You know, the Omega is a very classically styled watch. Apart from, I know the bezel itself can be a little controversial. I haven't met too many people that thought the Omega was an ugly watch. The Seiko, on the other hand, I think it's gorgeous, but I have met many people that think the watch is absolutely hideous. So I'm in apparently the club that thinks it's the gorgeous thing, and everybody else thinks it's a ugly duckling. Like the Omega, it also has a rotating bezel, although unlike the Omega, this one actually is easy to use. They've actually hollowed out part of the case, so it's so easy to grip and just rotate it around. Bezel-wise, the Seiko, to my mind, is a way better bezel than the Omega because it actually moves. The dial on the Seiko as well is gorgeous. It doesn't have the wave pattern that the Seamaster does. However, there's almost like a textured black. I can't catch it on this camera, but the dial looks very rich in person. The markers are done immaculately. The luminescence on this watch is stratospherically awesome because I've yet to see a watch that has better lume than a Seiko Monster. It does actually have a day-date movement, unlike the Seamaster where you just get a date. As such, here you actually get a day of the week and a date, something that the Japanese seem to make standard, but you know, Swiss watches you pay a fortune to get a day of the week. This uses the Seiko in-house 4R36 movement, 24 joules, 21,600 beats per hour, so it's ticking at a much slower rate than the Seamaster is. The Seamaster is moving at 28,800. So you're going to notice that the Seamaster, the second-hand sweeps, whereas the Monster would actually more tick. It's a much more noticeable look to it. I like them both for different reasons. I love the smooth sweep of a higher beat watch. However, I like the mechanical look of a lower beat watch, and I also know the lower beat watches tend to be require service less frequently, typically. I know high beat watches like 36,000 beats, those things every couple of years, they tend to need to be serviced because it's a lot of wear on the movement. The head of itself almost kind of sits in this little like cradle-like bit, which is nice. Like the Omega, it also has a screw-down crown with some nice knurling on it, so you can grab it easily. Get it off. First position, like on the Omega, is winding. Second position is going to change the day of the week. Now, I know you guys are looking at the date or the day of the week and wondering what you're looking at. This isn't actually an Arabic and English date wheel, as this is a model that's typically sold in the Far East. I like seeing the Arabic there. I think it's very pretty, although I will not pretend to read it. And my friends that I grew up with that stem from the Middle East, I know you guys are very disappointed in me that when we were hanging out, you guys didn't get through to me on teaching me any Arabic. So I failed miserably, and I have no idea what any of that stuff says. So I'm so sorry that I didn't pay more attention when we were hanging out all those years ago. You rotate it the other way, changes the date. So let's go ahead for the 25th, like Christmas. And it is also hacking. So the second hand will stop just like the Omega. And so again, you can accurately set the time to whatever it is you want to do. And let's just rotate this all around here. So movement-wise, lower beat movement in the Seiko. Again, it's 21,600 versus 28,800 on the Omega. This is 24 joules versus the Omega's 23 joules. However, this is not COSC certified. So the Omega is going to keep chronometer spec time. The Seiko, not so much. The 6R series, which they also included in higher end monsters, is much more accurate. My Seiko, however, I think is keeping about minus 10 seconds a day, something to that effect. Whereas the Omega, I've had it as little as, plus or minus a second a day. So the Omega definitely is a better timekeeper. Bracelet, it's very fluid, nicely done. Brushed with a little bit of high polish here. It's kind of, I've never seen a bracelet like this before. High polish on the sides. Safety, dual deployant triggers. This is just a stamp fold over, so definitely not the nice machine piece that you get on the Omega. Granted, the considerable cost difference in these two watches could speak to that. Like the Omega too, it also has a diver's extension. And you can wear it over a wetsuit like that. So again, both dive watches, both have bracelets with dive extensions. Both are good to at least 200 meters, although the Omega has a better depth rating than the Seiko. Both in my mind are extremely well made, and both I think would be pretty good dive watches. Now, again, they're stratospherically different in terms of price and personality too. The Monster is a really chunky watch, and it's very substantial, and it feels very utilitarian and like a tool. The Seiko, the Omega Seamaster, is a much thinner profile watch. It wears like a dress watch. And just like Pierce Brosnan did in the Bond movies, you could wear this with a suit. It's going to slide under your dress cuffs. The whole bracelet, everything about it is lower profile. It wears slim. There's definitely more of an elegance to it. With the Seiko, you're getting this kind of brutalist in-your-face design. The Seamaster is much more elegant and refined. Now, I have both sides to my personality. There's days I like to be elegant, and there are days that I just like to be in your face and showy. So they both cater to different aspects of my personality, and I love them both equally. Picking a winner here, I like them both equally. I would say value-wise, I think the Seiko is the better watch. I think the Seiko is worth way more than they're asking for it. I think the Omega, as any luxury watch, I think you're paying somewhat for the branding, and I think you're buying some of the history with it as well. That said, I don't think the Omega is overpriced. Omega did an awesome job modifying the ETA 2892 movement, turning it into the Cal 1120. The finishing on it is spectacular. If you watch my review, you know what I'm talking about. They did an awesome job. The finishing on the case is impeccable. The wave dial is awesome. The whole look of this watch is wonderful. Bezel, I hate it. I like the way it looks. Not practical. I don't dive, so I don't really care. Helium escape valve, I think, is a nice little piece to talk about with friends. I don't know that it really has any function. The bracelet, nowadays, I'd say isn't particularly much better than the Seiko Monster. However, when this watch came out back in the 90s, compared to the Rolex, this bracelet was incredible. Back then, Rolex was still using hollow end links, and they were using fold-over clasp. And if you would have held a Rolex from the 90s and this thing would have knocked the Rolex out of the park. So when this thing came out, this thing was a revelation for bracelets. Nowadays, I think, it's a little bit below average, but it's still a wonderful bracelet, and Omega's only made it better. So, it's kept up with the times. It's not a criticism of this watch. It's just a reflection of when it was built. The Monster, You get the cheap fold over, but otherwise the bracelet's pretty solid. You know, the clasp is definitely not as good as the Omega, but unlike the Omega, you do get the fine adjustments that I really like. You still get the divers extension, and they both use these push pin links, and they both have nice fluidity, which means they're both really comfortable to wear on the wrist. So value-wise, the Seiko wins for me. I think if you're looking for a dive watch at a good value, I think that the Seiko is massively underpriced. That said, I adore my Omega. Now, some of this is the romance left over from my childhood. You know, with the whole Pierce Brosnan, James Bond tie-in, this watch is a part of who I am, and I don't ever plan on selling it. I love this watch to death, and owning it has not been a disappointment. This is definitely a hero that I'm happy that I got to meet. Awesome watch, and if you have some more money to spend, this is definitely a solid choice. This is an awesome watch, and as a previous owner of a 16610 Rolex Submariner, I like this better all day. I wear these both about equally. I think they both make me happy for very different reasons, and hopefully this video has given you guys a little bit of a better understanding that, you know, watches are more than just a brand and a price tag. There's a lot more that comes into them, and just because a watch has a certain brand in the dial or a certain price tag doesn't make it guaranteed to be inferior or superior based on those attributes alone. You'll really be surprised the watches that resonate with you. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Again, this is one of my more politically incorrect reviews. I like to throw these out there occasionally to challenge the market a little bit. I know it's been a little long, and I'm sure if you did my normal topics and points and whatever. So hopefully I didn't bore you guys. You enjoyed it. As always, guys, you know, thank you so much for the support. Let me know what you guys think. I'm really curious. You know, are you guys brand first, price point first, or are you open to exploring different options? And which one would you personally rather have, assuming they were the same cost? Is there really one you think is substantially better than the other? And again, as a diving tool, I can't speak as a diver because I'm not a diver. I'm a car guy. So if you guys can speak from a diving perspective, I'd love to hear if you think that there's really a lot of benefit to the extra 100 meters and the helium escape valve. Let me know what you guys think below. As always, guys, thanks so much. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. If you hated it, feel free to tell me about it. I may read it, I may not. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. But remember, guys, you got to subscribe to do it. As always, take care, and I'll see you soon.